Cassie, you were right. Your grandpa sounds awesome.
Wow, Cassie, you're right. Your grandpa sounds awesome.
I'm almost tearing up again.
I'm almost tearing up again. 또 눈물이 날 것 같아. I'm almost tearing up again. I'm almost tearing up again. I'm almost tearing up again. Tear up. 눈물이 돌다. 눈물이 돌다. I'm almost tearing up again. I'm almost tearing up again. I'm almost tearing up again.
Well, Cassie, unfortunately, growing up, I didn't
Well, Cassie, unfortunately, growing up,
have the same kind of relationship that you have with your grandparents.
I didn't have the same kind of relationship that you have with your grandparents. Growing up, 자라면서, I didn't have the same kind of a relationship. 그런 사이는 아니었어. I didn't have the same 같은 좀 그런 건 아니었어. I didn't have the same kind of relationship that you have with your grandparents. Like Cassie, unfortunately, growing up, I didn't have the same kind of relationship that you have with your grandparents. I didn't have the same kind of relationship. I didn't have the same kind of relationship that you have with your grandparents. 너가 할머니 할아버지랑 그런 사이 보냈던 그런 사이는 아니지만 I didn't have the same kind of relationship. 그런 사이는 아니었어. I didn't have the same kind of relationship that you have with your grandparents.
It's because my grandparents weren't around.
Just because my grandparents weren't around. 안 계셨으니까. Just because 안 계셨으니까. Just because my grandparents weren't around. 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 Just because my grandparents weren't around.
Of course, I heard lots of stories about my grandparents.
Of course, I have lots of stories about my grandparents.
And I think they sounded like super interesting people.
And I think they sounded like super interesting people. I think they sounded like super interesting people. I think they sounded like 것 같더라고. I think they sounded like super interesting people.
My mom's dad, my maternal grandpa.
My mom's dad, my maternal grandpa.
He was Scottish from Scotland.
He was Scottish from Scotland.
However, he immigrated to Canada and also lived in the USA. For a little while. He was in the Navy during World War II.
He was in the Navy during World World War II. He was in the Navy. He was in the Navy during World War II
and fought in the war.
and fought in the war. 전쟁에서 싸우셨고.
He was a jack of all trades.
He was a jack of all trades. He was a jack of all trades. He was a jack of all trades. He was a jack of all trades.
Apparently was really handy.
손재주가 있었어. Apparently he was really handy. 손재주가 있었어. handy. I am handy. I'm really handy. 나 손재주가 진짜 있어. He was really handy. He was really handy.
He was an engineer.
He was an engineer. He was an engineer.
A hobby of raising chinchillas.
He had a hobby of raising chinchillas.
And selling chinchillas. He sounded like a pretty eccentric.
He sounded like a pretty eccentric. He sounded like pretty eccentric.
Kind of interesting individual.
Kind of interesting individual. 흥미로운 사람인 것 같았어.
So it's a bummer that I never got to meet him.
So it's a bummer that I never got to meet him. It's a bummer that I never got to meet him. 만날 수 없는 건 정말 안타까운 일이야. It's a bummer. 진짜 아쉬워. It's a bummer. 못 뵌 거는. That I never got to meet him. 본 적이 볼 수가 없다는 게 너무. Never got to meet him. 없으니까. It's a bummer. 너무 아쉬워. 안타까워. 너무 아쉬워. It's a bummer that I never got to 볼 수 없었다니 meet him. It's a bummer that I never got to meet him. 너무 아쉽다. It's a bummer that I never got to visit there. 못 간 게 너무 아쉽다. It's a bummer. It's a bummer that I missed. It's a bummer. 너무 아쉬워. It's a bummer that I never got to taste it. It's a bummer that I never got to taste it. It's a bummer. 너무 아쉬워. It's a bummer that I never got to try it. 그걸 한번 해볼 수 없었던 게 너무 아쉽다.
And the same goes for my other grandparents as well, that I
The same goes for my other grandparents as well that I
never got to meet.
never got to meet.
However, I had some other family members.
However, I had some other I had some other family members.
I have an aunt on my dad's side.
I have an aunt on my dad's side.
Actually, my dad's only sister,
Actually, my dad's only sister,
who is, I think, 11 or 12 years older.
who is, I think, 11 or 12 years older than my dad. Who is, I think, 11 or 12 years older than my dad.
She is such a fantastic person in my life.
She is such a fantastic person in my life, my
And-
aunt.
And although she's not really like grandma age for me,
And although she's not really like grandma age for me,
she was like the kind of grandma figure in my life.
she was like the kind of grandma figure in my life. 그런 존재 모습이었어. 그러니까 내 인생에서 이모는 할머니 같은 피규어였어. Was like kind of grandma figure. 할머니의 모습이었어. 그런 거였어. And she was like 이런 거였어. She was like the kind of grandma figure in my life. 내 인생에서 할머니 같은 모습이었어. 존재였어. figure. 그런 걸로 기억이 나요. She was like the kind of grandma figure. She was the kind of grandma figure in my life. 인생에서 할머니 같은 모습, 존재였어. In my life. He was like the kind of my ideal dad figure in my life. They were like the kind of 뭐지? The kind of she was like the kind of grandma figure. They were like the kind of children figure. 아이들의 그 모습이었어. 응? 모습? Children figure in my life. She was like the kind of teacher in my life. She was like the kind of grandma figure in my life.
I think she really stepped up and filled that grandma like role. So
I think she really stepped up and filled that grandma like role.
although I never called her grandma or anything like that,
I never called her grandma or anything like that. 그렇게 부른 건 아니지만, although 그런 건 아니지만, although I never called her grandma or anything like that. 뭐 할머니라든지 뭐 그런 식으로 부른 건 아니지만, 너무하지만 너무한 건 아니지만 Although I never called her grandma or anything like that, I think
she kind of played the role for me as an older relative that I'm really close to. So I'm
close to. Although I never called her grandma or anything like that, I think she kind of played the role. 역할을 했어. Played the role for me, like as an older relatives, older relative that I'm really close to. 정말 가까운 나이든 친척으로서의 역할을 했어. She played the role for me as an older relative that I'm really close to. Played the role for me as an older relative that I'm really close to.
Super thankful to my aunt and also
I'm super thankful to my aunt. 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 I'm super thankful to my 너무 고마워. I'm super thankful to my aunt and also her husband.
her husband, my
uncle.
They kind of stepped in and provided like a grandpa like relationship in my life.
They kind of stepped in and provided like a grandpa like relationship in my life.
We did lots of fun things when we were kids.
We did lots of fun things when we were kids. We did lots of things. 많은 것들을 했어. We did lots of fun things. 많은 재미있는 것들을 했어. When we were kids. 우리가 어린아이였을 때. I did lots of fun things when I was little, when we were kids. I did lots of fun things. 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 And we did lots of fun things. Did lots of fun things. 진짜 재밌는 거 많이 했어. Did lots of fun things when we were kids.
They would take us camping.
They would take us camping. 캠핑의 재료죠. Take us camping. They would take me camping. She would take me some good restaurant. I can take you a good restaurant. I can take you.
And we'd spend time at their house and
We spent time at their house. 집에서 시간을 보냈어. We would spend time at their house. 집에서 시간을 보내. At their house. We almost spend time at our house. 집에서 주로 시간을 보냈을 때 spend time at house. 집에서 시간을 보낸다. Spend time at 집에서 시간을 주고받는다. 집에서 시간을 주고받는다.
I'm still really close with them today, so
I'm still really close with them today, so I'm still really close with them today, so I'm still 여전히 친해. 가까운 사이야. I'm still really close with them today, so I'm still really close to I'm still really close with them, so I'm still really close with them today. So, listeners,
don't worry.
Don't
It's not like
worry.
I
It's
missed
not
out
like-
on this kind of grandparent-grandchild relationship.
it's not like 그런 건 아니야. It's not like I missed out on this kind of grandparents grandchildren relationship. 한번 알아보지. 혼자서 내가 놓친 건 아니야. It's not like 그런 건 아니야. So listeners, don't worry. It's not like 그런 건 아니야. It's not like I missed out on the kind of grandchildren relationship. I think
I had a really close relationship with my other family members.
I think I had a really close relationship with my other family members
That filled that missing spot.
that filled that missing spot. 빈 부분을 채워주는 filled that missing spot. I had a really close relationship with my other family members that filled that missing spot.
Yeah, it's total opposite for me.
Yeah, it's total opposite for me, Andrew. It's total opposite for me, Andrew. Yeah, it's total opposite. 안 되네. It's total opposite for me. 나랑 완전 반대인데? Yeah, it's total opposite for me. Yeah, it's total opposite for me. Spend time at one's house. It's total opposite for me. Total total opposite for me. Total opposite for me. Yes, it's total opposite for me. Opposite for me. It's a total opposite for me. 안 되다. 안 돼? It's a total opposite for me. It's a total opposite for me. It's total opposite for me. It's the total opposite for me.
You know, you only had one that
You only
saw
had one that
closely.
you
I think
saw
I have.
closely. I think I have, six.
I don't know how
I don't know
common
how
it is
common.
in Canada to
Six.
divorce.
I don't know how common it is in Canada to divorce. 결혼하는 게 얼마나 흔한 일인지 모르겠어. I don't know how common it is in Canada to divorce and remarry. I don't know how common it is in Canada to divorce and remarry. I don't know. 모르겠어. I don't know how common. 얼마나 흔한 일인지 모르겠어. I don't know how common it is in Canada to divorce and remarry. 한국에서는 이혼하고 재혼하는 게 얼마나 흔한 일인지는 모르겠어. I don't know how common it is in Canada to. I don't know how common 얼마나 흔한 일인지 모르겠어. It is in Korea. 한국에서는 to learn 스페인어를 배우는 게 얼마나 흔한 일인지 모르겠어. I don't know how common it is in Korea to have a party. I don't know how common it is in Korea to
divorce and remarry, but it's very common here in the U.S.
It's very common here in the U.S. But it's very common here. 이거 되게 흔한 일이야. It's very common here. Common. It's very common. Common. It's very common. 아이고. Common. It's very common. Common. It's very common. Common. It's very common. I don't know how common. I don't know how common it is in Canada to divorce and remarry, but it is very common here in the USA. It is very common here in Korea.
I've had grandparents just hop in the family train throughout the years.
I've had the grandparents just hop in the family train throughout the years.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, you know, my Nana, who I'm
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, you know, my Nana, who I mentioned earlier,
she
내가 아까 말했던 그 사람, who I mentioned earlier, 내가 아까 말했던 내나, who I mentioned earlier, who I said earlier, who I mentioned earlier, my Nana, who I mentioned earlier,
was actually divorced.
she was actually divorced. 이혼을 하셨거든? 이렇게 쓰는구나. She was actually divorced. 이혼을 하셨어. She actually
And I had a kind of step grandpa growing up.
And I had a kind of step grandpa growing up. 할아버지를 자라면서 가졌고, I had a kind of step grandpa growing up
As well.
Although
I wasn't very close with him.
Although I wasn't very close with him. 너무하긴 했지만. 친하지 않긴 했는데. Although I wasn't very close with him. 엄청 안 친했는데.
I did have a kind of step grandfather for a little while there when I was.
I did have a kind of step grandfather for a little while there when I was
growing up.
So 크면서 when I was growing up. 크면서 자라면서 when I was growing up. 자라면서. So
same thing happened in my family, Cassie.
Same thing happened in my family, Cassie. 그래도 그런 일이 있었어. Same thing happened in my family. 그런 일이 있었어. Same thing happened. Yeah, same thing happened in my family. Same thing happened in my family, Cassie.
Andrew, one thing I actually think about when I think of grandparents is I think about the future.
Andrew, one thing I actually think about when I think of grandparents is
because
I think about the future.
Your scientists or doctors say
Scientists and doctors saying 말하는 거 들었지. You hear scientists or doctors saying that you hear scientists or doctors saying that our lifespans are getting longer.
our lifespans are getting longer.
Our lifespans are getting longer. I think lifespans are getting longer. 점점 길어진대, 수명이 길어진대. Lifespans. 사람 한 명인데.
And I can just imagine, a couple generations from now,
I can just imagine, a couple generations from now,
maybe everybody will have
maybe everybody will have
12 grandparents or something.
12 grandparents or something.
Because, people will be living longer and have your grandparent,
Because people will be living longer. Live longer and have your grandparents,
great-great-grandparents, could be really different in a couple generations.
It could be really different in a couple generations.
Yeah, that's fascinating to think about.
Yeah, that's fascinating to think about. Yeah, that's fascinating to think about. Yeah, that's fascinating to think about. 생각해보면 흥미로운 일이야. Yeah, that's fascinating to think about.
I know that in my family, my
I know
immediate
that in
family,
my immediate
we
family,
seem to have
children
very late
very
in
late
life, which
in
is why
life,
I
which
think my
is
grandparents
why
already
I
passed
think my
away by the time I was
grandparents already
born,
passed away
because
by the time I was
my
born.
mom was 34
Because
or
my mom
35 when she had me.
My mom was 34 or 35 when she had me.
So that's later in life, and
So that's later in life. 나중에는, 어? 그래서 that's later in life. 나중에는,
I'm 37. I don't
I'm
have any children.
37,
So if
So that's later in life.
I do have children,
Well,
then it will
So if I do have children, then it will be
be at a late
at a
age
late
as well.
age as well. It will be at a late age. It will be late age as well, and
That's just kind of
that's just
how
kind of
my family
how
does
my
things.
family does
However, I have
things.
a
However, I
cousin,
have a
and
cousin,
his
and
side of the
his side
family
of
is
the
much
family is much
different.
different.
They seem to
They seem
have
to
kids
have
when they're
kids when
young,
they're
and
young.
that cousin
The
on
cousin
his
on his
mom's side of the family,
which isn't connected
to
to
my
my
family through a
blood relationship.
That
That
side
side of his family has children very young, and he actually has a grandma and a great grandma. So there are four generations on this side of the family. And yeah, Cassie, I can only imagine as medical technology develops even further, and we have new scientific breakthrough and longevity,
or
maybe
200 years becomes a
becomes a
reality.
reality.
Then we're going
Longevity.
relationship.
That side
Of his
of his family has children very young, and he actually has a grandma and a great grandma. So there are four generations on this side of the family. And yeah, Cassie, I can only imagine as medical technology develops even further, and we have
scientific breakthroughs and longevity.
longevity, 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 longevity.
To 150 or 200
years
becomes a
reality.
reality. Then we're gonna
reality.
have great grandmas, great great grandmas, great 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 grandmas. Family gatherings like Thanksgiving and Christmas,
they're gonna be crazy. There's going to be too many people
Yeah,
at the
you'd be
house.
surprised though, Andrew, because
You'd be surprised though, Andrew.
I feel
Because
like
I feel like
people are having fewer
and fewer children.
You know, it might be the same amount of people, just
it might be the same amount of people, just more
and more generations. But who knows?
Who knows?
Well, Cassie,
I think we can wrap up our conversation here. But actually, in a future Culips episode, I'd like to talk more about this topic of aging and longevity.
There are many
Many things to talk about. So maybe we'll save the rest of this chat for a future episode. But for today, we will finish things here. So thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you learned a lot with this episode today.
Our website is culips.com. If you want to get this
longevity, 장수, longevity.